Well, hello there. I'm Rihanna Reeves, and tonight I'd like to invite you on a peaceful journey through a story called The Clockmaker Who Repaired Lost Evenings. Before we begin, make yourself as comfortable as you can. Feel the gentle support beneath you. Allow your shoulders to become just a little softer. Let your hands rest wherever they feel most natural. Take one slow breath in and breathe out even more slowly. There's nothing left to finish tonight. Nothing waiting that cannot patiently wait until morning. The day has already given you everything it needed to give. Now, it is your turn to receive something in return. A little quiet, a little wonder, a little rest. Imagine standing at the edge of a peaceful village where twilight never seems to hurry away. The sky glows with soft shades of lavender, rose gold, and deep blue. Somewhere nearby, an old clock gently chimes, not because anyone is late, but because another beautiful evening has arrived. The air carries the scent of warm bread, fresh rain on cobblestones, and blooming jasmine climbing old stone walls. Windows begin to glow one by one. Lanterns awaken along quiet streets. And somewhere, just beyond a little town square, an elderly clockmaker is unlocking the door to a workshop unlike any other. They have been expecting you, and tonight, their most important repair will not be a clock. It will be something far more precious. So, close your eyes if they have not already closed. Let your breathing find its own gentle rhythm. And together, let us step quietly into the evening. There are villages that appear on maps, and there are villages that appear only when someone has finally remembered how to slow down. This was one of those villages. It rested in a wide green valley where gentle hills rolled like quiet waves beneath the evening sky. A narrow river wandered lazily through the center. Small stone bridges crossed the water. Flower boxes overflowed with lavender, white daisies, and climbing roses. No one seemed to rush. No one seemed concerned about the hour. Children skipped home, carrying little baskets of apples. A baker swept flour from the front step of a warm little shop. An old woman watered herbs growing beneath her kitchen window, while humming a tune older than anyone could remember. Every face wore the peaceful expression of someone who believed there was enough time. At the heart of the village stood a round clock tower. Its stone walls had been warmed by countless sunsets. Golden ivy climbed gently around its windows. The great clock upon its face showed a curious time. Not 6 o'clock. Not 7. Not any hour at all. Instead, its hands rested somewhere between moments. The traveler stood beneath the tower and tilted their head. Has it stopped? A gentle voice answered from nearby. No, it has learned something. The traveler turned. Standing beside a workshop filled with glowing windows was an elderly clockmaker named Elias. Silver hair rested beneath a soft felt hat. Round spectacles balanced comfortably upon a kind face. A small brass key hung from a ribbon around the clockmaker's neck. Their long brown apron carried tiny specks of polished brass, wood dust, and the faint scent of cedar and cinnamon. The traveler smiled. What has the clock learned? Elias looked up toward the great clock tower. It learned that evenings are too beautiful to measure. The traveler laughed softly. I've never heard anyone say that. The old clockmaker smiled. Most clocks wouldn't agree with me. A warm breeze drifted through the square. Somewhere, a tiny bell rang. Not loudly, just enough to let the evening know it was welcome. The traveler looked around. "I've noticed something. No one seems to be checking the time." Elias nodded. "They stopped many years ago. Didn't they need schedules? They discovered something better." The traveler looked curious. "What?" The old clockmaker opened the workshop door. "Come inside. I'll show you." The workshop felt wonderfully warm. Hundreds of clocks rested upon wooden shelves. Large grandfather clocks, tiny pocket watches, cuckoo clocks carved from oak, elegant brass mantel clocks, delicate glass timepieces that shimmered like little stars. The traveler listened carefully. Instead of ticking together, each clock moved with its own quiet rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, tick, silence, tick. Some were slower, some quicker. None seemed worried about keeping pace with the others. "It's peaceful," the traveler whispered. Elias smiled. "They've stopped competing." At the center of the workshop stood a great wooden workbench. Upon it rested tiny gears, silver springs, polished hands, and little glass jars filled with curious things. One jar held golden sunlight, or at least, it looked like sunlight. Another contained tiny blue sparkles that drifted lazily like fireflies. A third held what seemed to be little wisps of laughter floating gently inside. The traveler leaned closer. "What are these?" The old clockmaker carefully lifted the smallest jar. "This one? It holds quiet moments." The traveler blinked. "Quiet moments?" Elias nodded. "The kind people forget while they hurry through their days." The traveler watched as a tiny golden sparkle floated lazily inside the glass. What happens if they're forgotten? The old clockmaker looked toward the village window where twilight painted the cobblestones with soft gold. They wait for someone willing to notice them again. Outside, the evening deepened. Lanterns awakened along every little street. Their warm glow reflected softly in the river. The scent of fresh bread drifted through the open window. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed. Not loudly, simply joyfully. The traveler smiled without thinking. The whole village felt as though it had gently wrapped itself in a blanket. Elias picked up an old pocket watch from the workbench. Its silver cover was beautifully engraved with tiny evening stars. "It arrived this morning," they said softly. "It has forgotten something." "What did it forget?" the traveler asked. The old clockmaker opened the watch. Inside, there were no numbers, only a tiny painted sunset. The hands rested perfectly still. "It forgot," Elias whispered with a gentle smile. "How to welcome the evening." The traveler looked at the little watch for a long moment, then asked, "Can it be repaired?" The old clockmaker's eyes sparkled kindly. "Oh, yes." They closed the watch with quiet care. But first, they reached for a small lantern hanging beside the workbench. Its amber light glowed as softly as honey. "There is someone I'd like you to meet." The traveler followed Elias toward a narrow wooden staircase at the back of the workshop. From somewhere above came the gentle sound of dozens of tiny clocks, all breathing together like peaceful hearts, waiting for another beautiful evening to begin. The little amber lantern cast a warm circle of light across the wooden staircase. Each step had been worn smooth by many quiet years. They creaked softly beneath Elian's careful footsteps, not as though they were old, but as though they enjoyed announcing every gentle visitor. The traveler followed slowly. One hand rested lightly upon the polished oak railing. It felt warm, comfortably familiar, as though countless kind hands had touched it before. Above, the soft ticking grew clearer, not louder, only closer. It was unlike any collection of clocks the traveler had ever heard. No ticking hurried another. No clock tried to lead. Each one moved with its own peaceful rhythm. Together, they sounded almost like gentle rain falling upon the roof of a cozy cottage. The staircase curved once, then twice. At the very top stood a simple wooden door. It was painted a pale shade of blue. Around its frame, small carved stars shimmered softly in the lantern light. Instead of a handle, there hung a tiny brass key. Elian lifted it gently. "This door doesn't lock people out," the old clockmaker said with a smile. "It simply waits until someone is ready." The traveler watched as the key turned without making a sound. The door opened slowly. Warm golden light spilled into the hallway. The room beyond was unlike anything the traveler had imagined. It stretched farther than seemed possible. Rows upon rows of wooden shelves reached toward a high ceiling crossed by sturdy beams. Upon every shelf rested hundreds of glass jars. Large jars, tiny jars, round ones, tall ones. Each glowed with its own quiet light. Some shimmered like candle flames. Others glowed pale blue. A few sparkled silver like starlight upon fresh snow. The traveler stepped inside. The air smelled of cedar wood, old books, lavender, and fresh rain. It was one of those rare places where every breath seemed to arrive a little slower than the last. "What is this place?" they whispered. Elian smiled. "This is the room of forgotten moments." The traveler looked from shelf to shelf. "Forgotten moments?" The old clockmaker nodded. "The small, beautiful pieces of life that people accidentally hurry past." They walked slowly down one of the aisles. The lantern's warm glow danced across the glass jars. Each jar carried a tiny handwritten label. The traveler leaned closer. One read, "The first warm breeze after winter." Another, "The smell of bread cooling on a windowsill." Another, "Watching raindrops race down a window." Another, "A grandparent's quiet laugh." The traveler smiled softly. "I remember that one." Elian looked kindly toward them. "Do you?" The traveler closed their eyes. And suddenly, they did. Not as a picture, not as a story, only as a feeling, a gentle laugh, warm hands, a comfortable chair beside an open window. The memory lasted only a heartbeat. But when it faded, it left behind a quiet warmth. The traveler opened their eyes. It felt real. The old clockmaker nodded. It never stopped being real. They continued walking. One shelf held nothing but little jars of evening skies. Each glowed with a different sunset. Soft pink, golden amber, deep violet. Clouds painted in colors too gentle to describe. "Do people really forget sunsets?" the traveler asked. Elian gave a thoughtful smile. "Not the sunsets, the pause that came with them." The traveler looked around the room again. Perhaps, they thought, life isn't made only of important days. Perhaps it is woven together by tiny moments that ask for almost nothing except to be noticed. Near the center of the room stood an old wooden table. Upon it rested several empty jars. Beside them lay a feather quill and a small leather notebook. The pages were filled with elegant handwriting. The traveler opened it carefully. Inside were simple entries. This evening, someone noticed the smell of jasmine after the rain. A child stopped to watch butterflies instead of running home. An old friend smiled before saying goodbye. Someone listened without looking at the clock. Nothing extraordinary. Yet somehow, every sentence felt precious. Who writes these? The traveler asked. Elian gently closed the notebook. The evenings. The traveler smiled. The evenings? They like to remember who noticed them. A comfortable silence settled over the room. Somewhere high above, an old clock chimed once, not to announce an hour, only to remind the room that another peaceful moment had arrived. Then, the traveler noticed one jar sitting all by itself. Unlike the others, it wasn't glowing. It was perfectly clear, empty. Its label simply read, "An evening still waiting." The traveler picked it up carefully. "It hasn't happened yet." Elian nodded. Every person has one. The traveler turned the jar slowly in their hands. "What kind of evening is it?" The old clockmaker's eyes twinkled. "We never know. It could be the evening someone forgives themselves, or the evening they finally rest. It might be the evening they notice the stars after many busy years, or simply the evening they sit quietly with someone they love." The traveler looked through the empty glass toward the warm lantern light. It didn't seem empty anymore. It seemed full of possibility. Elian gently placed the jar back upon the table. "It will fill itself," they said softly, "when the time is ready." Just then, a tiny silver bell rang somewhere deeper within the workshop. Only once, clear, gentle, welcoming. The old clockmaker smiled. "Ah, they're awake." "Who?" the traveler asked. Elian lifted the amber lantern once more. "The evening keepers." Beyond a curved archway at the far end of the room, a narrow hallway glowed with soft golden light. Tiny shadows moved peacefully across its walls, as though someone or something was quietly tending to the last beautiful moments of every passing day. The tiny silver bell became quiet once more. Its gentle note lingered in the warm air, like the last glow of sunlight resting upon a quiet rooftop. Elian lifted the amber lantern. The traveler followed. Together, they walked beneath the curved stone archway. Beyond it, the workshop became even quieter. The hallway stretched gently ahead. Its walls were lined with old wooden clocks. None had faces. None had hands. Only softly glowing circles of amber light. The traveler tilted their head. "How do they tell the time?" Elian smiled. "They don't. They tell peace." The traveler found themselves smiling. Somehow, that answer felt perfectly natural here. The hallway curved gently. Its wooden floor carried the comforting scent of cedar and beeswax. Small windows overlooked the village below. Outside, twilight still lingered. The sky glowed with soft lavender, peach, and the deepest shades of blue. It was as though evening had decided to stay a little longer. Ahead, a pair of old wooden doors stood slightly open. Warm golden light spilled through the narrow gap. The traveler could hear something beyond them. Soft footsteps, gentle laughter, the faint rustle of leaves moving in a calm breeze. Elias rested one hand upon the door. Ready? The traveler nodded. The doors opened slowly. Beyond them lay a garden unlike any other. It stretched farther than the eye could comfortably follow. Winding stone paths curved between flowering trees. Golden grasses swayed peacefully beneath the evening sky. Tiny lanterns hung from low branches. Not one burned brightly. Each glowed with the quiet warmth of candlelight. The traveler stopped. It feels... They searched for the right word. Unhurried. Elias nodded. This is the Garden of Golden Minutes. Every flower seemed touched by sunset. Golden roses, cream-colored lilies, soft blue lavender, clusters of tiny white blossoms that shimmered gently as though holding little pieces of starlight. Butterflies drifted lazily from flower to flower. They moved so slowly, they almost seemed to float. The air carried the scent of honey, warm earth, fresh herbs, and blooming jasmine. It was wonderfully calming. Then, the traveler noticed them. Small figures moving quietly through the garden, no taller than a child's knee. Each wore a simple cloak the color of autumn leaves. Tiny lanterns hung from their belts. They walked with careful, gentle steps, stopping now and then to kneel beside flowers, or smooth a bent blade of grass, or relight a lantern whose flame had grown faint. Who are they? The traveler whispered. Elias smiled warmly. The evening keepers. One of the little keepers approached. Their silver hair curled beneath a tiny straw hat. Their bright eyes sparkled with kindness. Without speaking, they offered the traveler a single golden flower. Its petals glowed softly in the fading light. The traveler accepted it carefully. "Thank you." The little keeper smiled, then quietly continued down the path. "They don't speak?" the traveler asked. "Oh," Elias chuckled softly. "They speak often. They simply use kindness instead of words." The traveler looked around. One keeper gently untangled a butterfly caught among climbing vines. Another carefully filled a bird bath with fresh water. One swept fallen petals into neat little circles beneath an old oak tree. None hurried. None appeared tired. Each task was performed with quiet joy. The traveler watched them for several peaceful moments. They never seemed to finish. The old clockmaker nodded. They're not trying to. They simply care for each evening as it arrives. A warm breeze drifted through the garden. The flowers bowed gently. Tiny lanterns swayed from their branches. One by one, little golden leaves began drifting from the tallest trees. But instead of falling to the ground, they floated slowly through the air, turning lazily, almost dancing. The traveler reached out. One leaf landed softly in their hand. It was warm, not hot, simply comforting. "What is it?" Elias looked toward the tree. "A golden minute." The traveler smiled. "A minute?" The old clockmaker nodded. The kind people wish had lasted just a little longer. The traveler looked closely. Inside the leaf, they could almost see tiny memories shimmering. Someone watching the sunset from a quiet porch. A family laughing around a dinner table. The smell of cinnamon drifting through a warm kitchen. A child falling asleep on a parent's shoulder. Simple moments, beautiful moments. Moments no one wanted to end. The traveler closed their fingers gently around the leaf. It dissolved into tiny specks of warm light. The warmth lingered in their hands for several peaceful breaths. It disappeared. The old clockmaker smiled. No, it became part of you. The traveler placed a hand over their heart. Somehow, they believed him. They continued along the winding path. Near the center of the garden stood a magnificent old tree. Its branches stretched wide above a circle of wooden benches. Tiny lanterns hung among its leaves like little stars. Beneath the tree rested a single grandfather clock. Unlike every other clock in the workshop, its face held only one word: now. The traveler laughed softly. That's all? Elias nodded. It has never needed anything else. The great clock gave one gentle chime, not announcing an hour, only honoring the present moment. The traveler closed their eyes. They listened. The breeze, the butterflies, the distant village, the soft footsteps of the evening keepers, their own breathing. Everything seemed perfectly complete. When they opened their eyes again, they realized something. For the first time in what felt like a very long while, they had not wondered what would happen next. They had not thought about yesterday or tomorrow. Only this peaceful evening, only this quiet breath. Elias noticed the gentle smile upon the traveler's face. I believe, he said softly, the garden has given you its first gift. What gift? The traveler asked. The old clockmaker looked toward the glowing tree. The ability, he whispered, to let one beautiful moment be enough. Just then, from somewhere beyond the far end of the garden, came the gentle sound of water flowing over smooth stones. It was slow, steady, peaceful. A little stone bridge appeared between flowering hedges. Beyond it, a silver stream shimmered beneath the deepening twilight. The evening keepers quietly bowed toward it as they passed. Elias lifted the amber lantern once more. There is someone waiting beside that stream, he said with a warm smile. Someone who has been collecting sunsets for longer than even I can remember. The traveler looked toward the softly flowing water. Their heart felt wonderfully light. Together, they crossed the little stone bridge, while behind them, golden minutes continued drifting gently through the evening air, waiting patiently for anyone willing to slow down long enough to notice them. The little stone bridge arched gracefully over the silver stream. Its smooth stones had been polished by countless gentle footsteps. The traveler and Elias crossed without hurry. Below them, the water flowed so quietly, it seemed less like a river and more like liquid evening itself. Golden reflections drifted upon its surface, not from the sun. The sun had already slipped below the distant hills. These reflections seemed to come from somewhere deeper, as though every beautiful sunset the world had ever known had left behind a little glow. The traveler paused at the middle of the bridge. The water below was perfectly clear. They expected to see smooth stones beneath its surface. Instead, they saw colors. Soft amber, rose gold, lavender, gentle shades of peach and violet. Each one drifted slowly with the current, like ribbons of light floating toward some peaceful destination. It doesn't carry water, the traveler whispered. Elias smiled. It carries evenings. Together, They stepped down from the bridge onto a narrow path that followed the riverbank. Tall willow trees leaned gracefully over the water. Their long branches brushed the current so lightly, scarcely disturbed it. The leaves whispered to one another in the soft breeze, a sound almost like distant applause. Tiny white flowers grew between smooth river stones. They released the delicate fragrance of chamomile whenever the wind passed by. The traveler breathed deeply. Every breath felt calmer than the one before. Ahead, an old wooden dock stretched quietly over the river. At its end sat a single rocking chair, occupied by someone whose silver hair shone softly beneath the twilight sky. An elderly woman, wrapped in a shawl the color of autumn leaves. She rocked gently, watching the river. In her lap rested a wide woven basket. It was filled with little glass bottles. Each bottle glowed with a different sunset. One held deep crimson, another warm orange, another pale pink fading into blue. The traveler stared in wonder. Are those? Elias nodded. Collected sunsets. The old woman looked up. Her smile arrived slowly, warmly, as though she had been expecting them all along. Good evening, Elias. Her voice was soft as falling leaves. And welcome, traveler. The traveler smiled. How did you know I was coming? The woman laughed quietly. The river always tells me. She gently lifted one of the glowing bottles. This one arrived only yesterday. Inside, a tiny sunset shimmered peacefully. Clouds drifted across its miniature sky. Golden light rested upon tiny invisible hills. The traveler could hardly believe it. It still moves. The woman nodded. Beautiful evenings never truly stand still. She carefully returned the bottle to the basket. My name is Mira. I gather sunsets that people were too busy to notice. The traveler looked sadly toward the glowing bottles. There must be so many. Mira smiled kindly. There used to be more. The traveler looked surprised. What changed? The old woman gazed toward the peaceful river. I think people are beginning to look up again. The words floated gently into the evening. The traveler hoped they were true. Mira reached into the basket once more. This time she removed an empty bottle. It was perfectly clear. No light rested inside. She handed it carefully to the traveler. What do I do with it? The old woman smiled. Nothing. Just hold it. The traveler wrapped both hands around the cool glass. At first, nothing happened. Then, very slowly, a soft golden glow appeared inside. Small at first, almost like a candle. Then brighter, gentler, until the bottle held a tiny evening sky. The traveler looked at Elias. I didn't do anything. The clockmaker smiled. You noticed. The traveler watched the little sunset shimmer peacefully. What sunset is this? Mira looked kindly into the bottle. The one you almost forgot. The traveler closed their eyes. Suddenly, they remembered. Not perfectly, only gently. Standing outside after a long day, watching sunlight rest upon distant trees, hearing birds settling for the night, feeling, for just a brief moment, that everything was enough. It had lasted only a minute, perhaps less, yet somehow, that quiet memory had waited patiently all this time. When the traveler opened their eyes, the bottle glowed a little brighter. It was still here, they whispered. Mira nodded. The heart keeps beautiful evenings, even when the mind becomes busy. The three of them sat quietly beside the river. The rocking chair moved gently. The willows whispered overhead. The glowing bottles reflected softly upon the calm water. One by one, tiny paper lanterns floated downstream. Each carried a small golden flame. The traveler watched them drift. Who sends those? Mira smiled. People who have learned to let difficult days go. The traveler followed one lantern with their eyes until it disappeared around the bend. It seems peaceful. It is, said Elias. The river never asks anyone to carry yesterday farther than necessary. The traveler sat silently for a long while, thinking, listening, breathing. Eventually, Mira stood, though she moved slowly. Every movement carried quiet grace. She lifted the basket of sunsets. I must take these home. Where is home? The traveler asked. She looked toward the horizon where the first stars were beginning to appear. Tomorrow. She smiled. Every sunrise borrows a little color from yesterday's sunset. The traveler looked back at the glowing river. Perhaps, they thought, nothing beautiful is ever truly lost. It simply becomes part of something yet to come. Mira walked slowly along the riverbank until she disappeared among the willow trees. The last golden bottle shimmered briefly through the branches, then faded from sight. Evening deepened. The first stars awakened overhead. The traveler noticed something beyond the bend in the river. A tiny boat, made entirely of polished wood. No oars. No sail. Only a single lantern glowing warmly at its bow. It waited quietly beside the shore, as though it had arrived exactly when it was meant to. Elias smiled. Our path continues by water. The traveler stepped toward the little boat. The river welcomed it with barely a ripple. Above them, the first evening star reflected softly upon the current. And somewhere beyond the next gentle bend, the sound of distant music drifted through the twilight. Not hurried, not loud, only patient, as though another peaceful secret was waiting to be discovered. The little boat rested quietly beside the riverbank. Its polished wooden sides reflected the first stars of the evening. The warm lantern at its bow glowed softly, not brightly enough to chase away the darkness, only brightly enough to make it feel welcoming. The traveler stepped carefully aboard. The wood gave a gentle sigh beneath their feet, not from age, but from contentment, as though it was happy to begin another peaceful journey. Elias followed. The little boat rocked once, then settled, without anyone lifting an oar, without the slightest push. It quietly drifted away from the shore. The river accepted it as though greeting an old friend. The traveler looked behind them. The willow trees grew smaller. The old dock faded into the soft blue evening. Mira stood beneath the branches. She lifted one hand in a quiet farewell. Her basket of glowing sunsets shimmered like a cluster of tiny stars. Then, the bend in the river gently carried her from view. Only the peaceful current remained. The traveler watched the water slip silently past. It was so calm that the stars above and the stars below seemed almost impossible to tell apart. It feels, they whispered, as though we're floating through the sky. Elias smiled. Perhaps the river has always borrowed a little from the heavens. The boat continued without hurry. Every now and then, it passed floating water lilies. Their white blossoms opened fully beneath the evening sky. Each cradled a single golden firefly, tiny lights resting upon tiny flowers. The traveler smiled. I've never seen flowers holding stars. The old clockmaker looked fondly toward the lilies. They're not stars. They're little pauses. The traveler laughed softly. Pauses? Elias nodded. The moments when the world remembers to breathe. The traveler closed their eyes. The gentle rocking of the boat, the whisper of the current, the fragrance of lilies, the distant song of evening birds, everything moved together with quiet harmony. For the first time in many days, perhaps many months, there was nothing to accomplish, nothing to solve. Only this slow journey, only this peaceful breath. After a while, the river widened. The banks drifted farther apart. Mist began to rise from the water, not thick enough to hide the way, only enough to soften it. The lantern at the bow painted warm circles across the silver mist. Ahead, small shapes slowly appeared, hundreds of clocks floating upon the water. Not large clocks, little pocket watches, wooden mantle clocks, tiny brass alarm clocks. Each rested upon its own little raft of smooth cedar wood. None ticked loudly. Instead, they gave off the gentlest heartbeat-like rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. The traveler stared in wonder. Why are they floating? Elias looked thoughtfully across the water. They are resting. Resting? The old clockmaker nodded. Even clocks grow tired. The traveler smiled. I've never thought about that. Most people don't. Elias reached gently toward one of the tiny floating clocks. Its silver face reflected the moon. The hands had stopped. Not because it was broken, because it was sleeping. Every evening, Elias said softly, the clocks of this village are given time to forget about time. The traveler watched another little clock drift slowly past. Its face held no numbers, only a painted evening sky. I think, the traveler whispered, people should do that too. The old clockmaker's smile widened. I've hoped someone would say exactly that. The boat drifted silently among the resting clocks. None bumped against another. Each seemed to know exactly where it belonged. The traveler noticed that some clocks glowed faintly. Others remained dark. What makes some shine? Elias looked toward the nearest one. The brighter they glow, the more peacefully someone ended their day. The traveler thought about that. Perhaps a peaceful evening was not something that happened by chance. Perhaps it was something gently practiced, like kindness, or gratitude, or breathing slowly. The mist parted. Ahead, a great round moon reflected perfectly upon the river. The traveler could no longer tell where the water ended and the sky began. The little boat seemed to float between two heavens, one above, one below. A soft breeze brushed across the surface. The floating clocks chimed together, not loudly, just once. A single, gentle note from each. It sounded like distant bells carried across quiet hills. The traveler listened. No melody, no song, yet somehow it felt complete. What are they saying? They asked. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, then answered quietly, they're thanking the day. The traveler smiled. They looked back at the evening they had lived, the village, the workshop, the room of forgotten moments, the garden of golden minutes, the river of sunsets. Every place had offered the same quiet invitation. Slow down, notice, breathe, be here. The traveler whispered, "Thank you." The words were not spoken to anyone in particular, and yet they seemed to belong everywhere. Just then, the little boat began to slow. The mist ahead shimmered softly. Beyond it, countless tiny lights flickered across the water. Not lanterns, not stars, something else. Warm, golden, patient. The traveler leaned forward. "What are those?" Elian lifted the amber lantern. Its flame glowed a little brighter. A peaceful smile appeared upon his face. "We've arrived," he said gently, "at the lake where evening wishes come to rest." The boat drifted toward the waiting lights, while behind them, the little floating clocks continued their quiet sleep, gently reminding the world that even time itself sometimes needs a peaceful evening. The little boat slowed, almost to a stop. The river widened quietly until its gentle current became perfectly still. Before them, the water opened into a great lake. Its surface was smooth as polished glass. Not a ripple disturbed it. Not a wave hurried across it. The traveler gazed in silent wonder. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of tiny golden lights floated upon the lake. Each light rested inside a delicate paper lantern. Some were shaped like little stars, others like flowers. Some resembled tiny houses with glowing windows. Every lantern drifted peacefully, never colliding, never racing, only moving together with the quiet confidence of something that knew exactly where it belonged. The traveler whispered, "They're beautiful." Elian nodded. "They always are." The little boat glided among the lanterns. Each one cast a warm reflection upon the still water. Together, they transformed the lake into a sky filled with gentle constellations. Above, the stars watched quietly. Below, their golden cousins drifted through the peaceful night. The traveler reached toward the nearest lantern. Inside, there was no candle, only a soft light, warm and steady. "What keeps them glowing?" they asked. The old clockmaker smiled. "Hope." The traveler looked again. "It doesn't burn like a flame." "No," Elian answered softly. "Hope never needs to." The traveler let their hand rest upon the edge of the boat. The water was cool, silky, almost impossibly calm. Then, something extraordinary happened. One of the lanterns drifted closer, not because of the current. There was almost no current at all. It simply approached, as though it had recognized them. The traveler lifted it carefully. It was lighter than a feather. Inside, the golden light shimmered gently. A tiny folded piece of paper rested beneath it. The traveler looked toward Elian. "May I?" He nodded. Lanterns choose their readers. The traveler unfolded the paper. Only one sentence had been written. "May every ending become a gentle beginning." The words settled quietly into the heart. No explanation, no instructions, only a simple wish. The traveler folded the paper again. When they placed it back inside, the lantern glowed just a little brighter. It remembered. Elian said, Or perhaps, the traveler replied softly, I remembered. The old clockmaker smiled. I believe both are true. The boat drifted farther into the lake. Here and there, other travelers sat quietly in little wooden boats of their own. Some watched the lanterns. Some closed their eyes. Some simply listened to the silence. No one disturbed another. No one spoke above a whisper. The lake itself seemed to invite stillness. Far in the distance, a family of white swans moved gracefully through the golden lights. Their reflections blended so perfectly with the lanterns that, for a moment, they appeared to be floating through the stars themselves. The traveler smiled. I've never seen anything so peaceful. Elias rested the amber lantern beside him. There are places in the world, he said quietly, that don't ask us to become different. They simply remind us who we've always been. The traveler thought about that for a long while. How often had they believed peace was something to chase? Something hidden in another place, another season, another tomorrow? Yet tonight, peace had never seemed far away. It had been waiting in slow footsteps, warm tea, shared silence, kind smiles, and evenings gently noticed. The little boat came to rest beside a small circular island. It was no larger than a garden. At its center grew a magnificent willow tree. Its silver branches reached toward the water like long, graceful ribbons. Tiny lanterns hung among its leaves. They swayed softly in the evening breeze. Beneath the tree stood a single stone bench. No names were carved into it. No dates. Only 3 simple words. Rest a while here. The travelers stepped onto the island. The grass beneath their feet felt wonderfully soft. Wild thyme released its gentle fragrance as they walked. They sat upon the stone bench. The willow leaves whispered overhead. The lake shimmered all around them. The old clockmaker sat beside them. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence was full, not empty, comfortable, like sitting beside an old friend who understands that words are not always necessary. Eventually, the traveler looked toward the countless lanterns. Do all wishes come true? Elias considered the question carefully. Then he answered with the gentlest smile. No. The traveler nodded quietly. I thought so. But the old clockmaker continued. Every sincere wish changes the heart that makes it. The traveler looked once more at the glowing lake. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps the greatest miracle was not that the world changed overnight, but that a quiet heart could see the world differently by morning. A cool breeze wandered across the lake. Hundreds of lanterns swayed together, not wildly, only enough to make their reflections dance upon the water. Then, from somewhere beyond the far shore, a clock chimed, one gentle note, followed by another, then another, not marking the hour, calling someone home. Elias stood slowly. The evening is growing older, he said. There is one place left before the night gives its final gift. The traveler rose from the stone bench. Reluctantly, yet peacefully, they looked once more at the willow tree, the floating lanterns, the quiet swans, and the countless wishes resting upon the lake. Somewhere in the distance, a narrow path of smooth white stones had begun to glow beneath the moonlight. It climbed gently toward a hill crowned by a single oak tree. Beneath its branches, a warm window shone softly, as though a quiet home had been waiting all along. Together, the traveler and Elias stepped back into the little boat. It turned without a sound. The lantern at its bow reflected upon the still lake, and slowly they drifted toward the welcoming light, while behind them, the wishes of countless peaceful evenings continued to float, patiently until they were ready to become tomorrow's gentle hopes. The little boat drifted quietly away from the island. Behind them, the willow tree swayed gently. Its silver branches whispered their soft farewell to the countless lanterns floating upon the lake. The golden lights became smaller until they blended with the stars reflected upon the water. Ahead, the shoreline drew closer. The glowing path of white stones waited patiently, not bright, not demanding, simply welcoming. The boat touched the shore so gently that the traveler barely felt it. Elias stepped onto the smooth stones first. He held out his hand. The traveler accepted it. Together, they climbed the winding path. Each stone was warm beneath their feet, as though it had quietly gathered the last rays of the evening sun and decided to keep them safe until morning. On either side of the path, wildflowers nodded in the gentle breeze. Lavender, chamomile, white clover, tiny blue forget-me-nots. Their fragrance mingled with the scent of cedar drifting from somewhere ahead. The traveler breathed deeply. This place smells like peace. Elias smiled. I've always thought so. The hill was not steep. It seemed to encourage slow steps, as though it understood that some destinations should never be hurried. Soon, they reached the top. There, beneath the wide branches of an ancient oak, stood a little house. Its stone walls glowed softly in the moonlight. Warm amber light shone through every window. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney. A wooden porch wrapped around the front. 2 rocking chairs rested there, moving gently, though no one sat in them. A sleepy orange cat lay curled upon a woven rug. It opened one eye as they approached, purred softly, then drifted back into its dreams. The traveler smiled. I think this house was expecting us. It always is, Elias answered. He opened the little wooden gate. It gave a friendly creak, not the sound of old hinges, but the familiar greeting of a place that enjoys welcoming guests. The front door stood slightly open. Before they could knock, a warm voice floated from inside. Come in. The traveler looked at Elias. He simply smiled. They stepped into the house. Immediately, a comforting warmth wrapped gently around them. A fire crackled quietly in a stone hearth. Its flames danced lazily among smooth cedar logs. The room smelled of cinnamon, fresh bread, vanilla, and chamomile tea. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, not with clocks, with journals, hundreds of them. Some bound in deep green leather, others in faded blue cloth. A few looked so old, their pages had turned the soft golden color of autumn leaves. In the center of the room, an elderly woman sat beside the fire. Her silver hair was gathered into a loose braid. She wore a simple, cream-colored shawl. Her hands rested peacefully upon an open journal. She looked up. Her smile arrived gently, like the first star appearing at dusk. Welcome home, she said. The traveler hesitated. I've never been here before. The woman chuckled softly. My dear, she closed the journal with quiet care. Sometimes home is the place that reminds you who you are. The traveler felt something warm settle quietly inside. The woman stood slowly. She moved with calm grace, not because she was hurried, but because she had long ago stopped measuring life by speed. She poured 3 cups of warm tea. The delicate fragrance of honey and chamomile drifted through the room. 1 cup she offered to Elias, 1 to the traveler. She kept the 3rd for herself. Steam curled gently upward. For several peaceful moments, they simply sat together. No one felt the need to fill the silence. The fire spoke softly enough for everyone. Eventually, the traveler looked toward the shelves. There are so many journals. The woman nodded. Every evening writes one. The traveler blinked. The evenings write? They always have. She smiled kindly. They simply need someone willing to listen. She reached for 1 journal from a nearby shelf. Its cover was deep blue, worn smooth by many gentle hands. She opened it carefully. Only a single sentence had been written upon the page. Tonight, someone chose peace instead of hurry. The traveler smiled. Another journal. A father watched the sunset with his daughter before bedtime. Another. Someone forgave themselves for not finishing everything. Another. A stranger smiled at another stranger, and both carried the kindness home. Simple moments, quiet victories, nothing that newspapers would ever print. Yet somehow, they felt like the true history of the world. The traveler whispered, "These are beautiful." The elderly woman nodded. The world remembers its greatest events. She gently closed the journal, but evenings remember its kindest ones. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the wind moved gently through the oak leaves. The orange cat stretched, walked slowly across the room, and curled comfortably at the traveler's feet. Without thinking, the traveler rested a hand upon its warm fur. The cat purred, a deep, steady, comforting sound. The traveler smiled. "I think it likes me." The woman laughed quietly. "It only sleeps beside peaceful hearts." The traveler looked down. The cat had already fallen asleep again. Its tiny breathing rose and fell with perfect calm. Near the fireplace stood a curious object, an enormous clock. Unlike every other clock the traveler had seen, it had no hands, no numbers, only a circular window. Inside the window, the evening sky slowly shifted. Twilight, moonlight, stars, then dawn, again and again, without ticking, without chimes. The traveler walked closer. "What kind of clock is this?" The elderly woman joined them. "It doesn't measure time." She rested 1 gentle hand upon the polished wood. "It measures presence." The traveler looked puzzled. "Presence?" She nodded. The more fully someone lives, the moment they're in, the brighter it becomes. As they watched, the little evening sky inside the clock glowed softly. The stars appeared brighter, the moon a little warmer. The traveler realized the room itself had grown quieter, not because fewer sounds existed, but because their heart had become still enough to hear them clearly. The fire, the kettle, the cat, the breeze, the gentle breathing of everyone in the room. Everything belonged exactly where it was. Just then, a faint bell chimed somewhere above the house. 1 soft note. Then silence. The elderly woman smiled toward the ceiling. The stars are nearly ready. Elias stood. He lifted the little amber lantern. Its flame had grown wonderfully small, like the last golden ember of a perfect evening. He looked kindly at the traveler. There is one final journey. The traveler smiled. I thought we had already reached home. Elias nodded. We have. He opened the cottage door. Above the house, a narrow staircase of pale stone climbed gently toward the hilltop. At its summit, resting beneath a sky filled with countless stars, stood a magnificent observatory with a great glass dome glowing softly from within. The traveler looked upward in quiet wonder. What waits there? The old clockmaker smiled. The place, he whispered, where every peaceful evening becomes tomorrow's first dream. Together, they stepped into the cool night air, while behind them, the little house continued welcoming every evening home, one quiet heart at a time. The little house disappeared quietly behind them. Its warm windows continued glowing beneath the ancient oak. From the chimney, a thin ribbon of smoke curled lazily into the night sky. The orange cat remained asleep beside the fireplace. The journals rested peacefully upon their shelves, and the great handless clock continued measuring only one thing: the quiet beauty of being fully present. Ahead, the pale stone staircase climbed gently toward the highest hill in the valley. Each step seemed carved from moonlight itself. The traveler noticed something curious. The higher they climbed, the lighter they felt, not because the path became easier, but because every step seemed to leave behind another unnecessary worry. The thought of unfinished work drifted away like mist. Old regrets became quieter. Questions about tomorrow softened. By the time they reached the top, their heart felt as calm as the evening sky itself. There, resting upon a circular terrace of smooth white stone, stood the observatory. Its great glass dome shimmered beneath thousands of stars. Warm golden light glowed from within. The building was old, very old. Its walls were built from pale limestone, polished smooth by centuries of gentle winds. Climbing ivy wrapped itself lovingly around the entrance. Tiny white flowers bloomed among its leaves. The scent of jasmine drifted quietly through the night air. Elias opened the tall wooden door. It moved without a sound. Inside, the traveler stopped in amazement. The observatory was unlike any place they had ever imagined. Instead of rows of complicated instruments, there were comfortable armchairs, soft wool blankets, round wooden tables, shelves filled with handwritten star journals, large windows curved beneath the glass dome. Above, the entire night sky stretched endlessly overhead. It felt less like a building and more like sitting comfortably beneath the universe itself. At the center of the room stood an enormous telescope. Its polished brass reflected the starlight. Unlike ordinary telescopes, there were no gears, no levers, only a small plaque engraved upon its base. It read, "Point not with your hands, but with your wonder." The traveler smiled. "I've never seen a telescope like this." Elias rested one hand gently upon the brass. "It doesn't search for stars. What does it search for?" The old clockmaker looked upward. "It helps people remember they have always belonged beneath them." The traveler stepped closer. Slowly, They looked through the telescope. At first, they expected distant constellations, bright planets, perhaps a passing comet. Instead, they saw something else. A quiet evening from long ago. A child lying on soft grass beside a parent, both looking silently at the stars. No words, only shared wonder. The image shimmered gently, then faded. Another appeared. An elderly couple sitting upon a porch swing beneath the Milky Way, holding hands, listening to crickets, smiling without speaking. Then another, a young traveler resting beside a campfire, looking upward for the very first time, and realizing how beautifully small they were beneath the sky. The traveler stepped back slowly. It doesn't show space. Elias smiled. It shows moments when people truly noticed it. The traveler looked around the observatory. Every chair was occupied, not by crowds, only by a handful of peaceful visitors. One person quietly sketched the moon. Another wrote in a journal. An elderly man simply watched the stars through the great dome, his eyes full of quiet gratitude. No one hurried. No one whispered louder than the breeze outside. The whole observatory seemed built for listening, not listening with ears, listening with the heart. Near one of the windows, a young woman gently polished tiny glass stars, each one no larger than a marble. The traveler approached. "What are these?" She smiled warmly. "They're dreams." The traveler blinked. "Dreams?" She nodded. "The peaceful ones." She held one tiny glass star toward the lantern light. Inside, soft golden clouds drifted lazily, almost like morning mist over quiet hills. "When someone falls asleep with a peaceful heart," she said softly, "their dreams become clear enough to shine." The traveler looked carefully at the little star. It seemed almost alive, not moving quickly, only breathing gently, like the slow rhythm of sleep itself. The traveler whispered, "I hope mine looks like that." The young woman smiled. "It already does." She carefully placed the tiny star into a velvet-lined wooden drawer. There were hundreds inside, each glowing softly, like little pieces of peaceful sleep waiting patiently for the night. The traveler turned toward the great dome once more. The stars overhead appeared brighter now, not because they had changed, because they had finally been noticed. Elias stood beside one of the curved windows. The stars have always been wonderful teachers. The traveler joined him. "What do they teach?" The old clockmaker smiled. "They never hurry to shine." The traveler looked upward. One by one, constellations revealed themselves across the velvet sky. None competed with another. Each simply occupied its own place, exactly where it belonged. Perhaps, the traveler thought, people were meant to do the same. Not brighter, not faster, simply themselves. A comfortable silence settled over the observatory. Someone gently turned the pages of a journal. The fire in a small stone stove crackled quietly. Outside, an owl called once from the distant forest. Then, nothing. Only peace, only stars, only breathing. After what might have been minutes, or perhaps an hour, a soft bell echoed through the observatory. No one stood. No one seemed surprised. The young woman quietly closed the drawer of glowing dream stars. The visitors smiled gently at one another. Elias looked toward the traveler. "It is almost time." "For what?" the traveler asked. The old clockmaker pointed toward a small wooden door at the far side of the observatory. Above it, carved into smooth oak, were simple words: "The quiet room before morning." The traveler looked at the door. Somehow, they already knew. Beyond it, the journey was nearly complete. Not because there were no more places to visit, but because the greatest destination had quietly been growing within them since the very first step into the village where twilight never hurried. Elias lifted the little amber lantern once more. Its flame had become no larger than a firefly, soft, warm, faithful. Together, they walked toward the waiting door, while overhead, the stars continued shining exactly as they always had, patiently waiting for every peaceful heart to remember how beautiful the night has always been. The little wooden door stood quietly beneath the curved roof of the observatory. Above it, the carved words caught the gentle starlight. "The quiet room before morning." Elias rested his hand upon the smooth oak. For a long moment, he did not open it. Instead, he simply stood there, breathing slowly, as though honoring the silence that waited beyond. Then, with the gentlest touch, the door swung inward. A warm glow greeted them. Not bright, not dazzling, only the soft golden light of many small candles resting safely inside glass lanterns. The traveler stepped through. Immediately, the air felt different. Still, comfortably still. The room was perfectly round. Its walls were lined with shelves of polished maple. There were no clocks here, no journals, no lanterns waiting to be lit. Only simple things: soft cushions, woven blankets, comfortable chairs, a kettle resting above a tiny fire, and at the center, a wide circular window open to the sky. Above, the stars shimmered silently. Below, the valley slept peacefully. The village glowed with scattered lights. The winding river reflected the moon. Far away, the clock tower stood quietly, its hands still resting between moments. The traveler whispered, "It feels as though the whole world is asleep." Elias smiled. "It almost is." The traveler walked slowly around the room. Every object seemed chosen with care. A smooth river stone rested upon one shelf, a single white feather upon another, a pressed autumn leaf, a tiny seashell, a dried sprig of lavender tied with blue ribbon. Each item was ordinary, yet somehow, none of them felt small. "What are these for?" the traveler asked. The old clockmaker picked up the smooth stone. He held it gently. "They remind people." "Of what?" "That peace has always hidden inside ordinary things." He placed the stone back exactly where it belonged. The traveler thought about the journey, the village, the workshop, the forgotten moments, the golden garden, the river of sunsets, the floating clocks, the lake of wishes, the welcoming house, the observatory. Every place had offered the same quiet lesson. Not louder, not grander, simply slower. The traveler settled into a comfortable chair beside the window. A thick wool blanket rested across the back. They wrapped it gently around their shoulders. It was wonderfully warm, as though it had been waiting just for them. Elias poured 2 cups of herbal tea. Steam rose slowly, carrying the soothing fragrance of chamomile, mint, and a hint of honey. Neither spoke. They sipped quietly, listening to the gentle crackle of the fire. After a while, the traveler noticed a small wooden box resting beneath the window. Its lid was carved with tiny evening stars. "May I?" they asked. Alien nodded. The traveler lifted the lid. Inside, there was nothing but folded pieces of paper, hundreds of them, every one tied with a thin, golden thread. "What are these?" The old clockmaker's eyes reflected the firelight. "They are unfinished thoughts." The traveler looked surprised. Unfinished? The kind people carry to bed. He smiled gently. Worries, questions, things they meant to say, things they hoped to finish. The traveler unfolded one paper. It was blank. Another, blank. A third, blank again. "I don't understand." Elian looked kindly at them. "They become blank when someone finally lets them go." The traveler smiled softly. "What happens if they don't?" The old clockmaker looked toward the quiet valley below. "They become heavy, and heavy thoughts rarely sleep well." The traveler slowly folded the paper again, carefully placing it back inside the box. For a long while, they simply watched the stars. One shooting star crossed the sky. Not quickly, almost lazily, leaving behind a silver trail that slowly disappeared into the night. The traveler smiled. "I used to think wishes belonged to shooting stars." Alien chuckled softly. "And now?" The traveler thought for a moment. "I think wishes belong to peaceful hearts." The old clockmaker's smile widened. "I believe you've learned everything I hoped you would." Silence returned. Comfortable, unhurried. Outside, the wind stirred gently through the grasses surrounding the observatory. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called once, then all was quiet again. The traveler looked toward the little amber lantern resting beside Elian. Its tiny flame had grown very small, no larger than a single glowing ember. "It will go out soon," they whispered. Elian looked at it fondly. "Yes, won't you miss it?" The old clockmaker shook his head. "No." He placed one hand gently over his heart, because it has already lit the place it was meant to. The traveler understood. The lantern had never been meant to burn forever. It had only needed to shine long enough to help someone find their own light. The fire in the hearth settled into glowing coals. The room became quieter still. The stars slowly wheeled across the heavens. Night continued its patient journey toward dawn. Then, far below in the sleeping valley, a single rooster called softly, not loudly, not enough to wake the village, only enough to let the night know that morning had begun its gentle walk toward the horizon. Elian stood. He lifted the little amber lantern one last time. Its flame flickered warmly, then steadied. "There is one final place," he whispered. The traveler smiled. "The last? The last." The old clockmaker nodded. "It isn't far." He opened a small door hidden behind a curtain of deep blue linen. Beyond it, a narrow garden path shimmered beneath the fading stars. At its end stood a simple wooden gate. Beyond the gate, the first pale light of dawn rested quietly upon a wide meadow filled with dew. The traveler felt no sadness, only gratitude. Some journeys end with excitement, others with applause. but this one, and felt like the gentle closing of a beloved book, the kind you place carefully upon the shelf, knowing its quiet wisdom will remain with you long after the final page. Together, they stepped into the cool morning air, while behind them, the quiet room before morning remained exactly as it always had, patiently waiting for every weary traveler who simply needed a peaceful place to let yesterday rest. The little wooden gate stood quietly at the edge of the meadow. Tiny drops of dew rested upon every blade of grass. They shimmered softly beneath the fading stars. The traveler and Elian walked side by side. No words were needed. Some journeys become so peaceful that silence begins speaking more beautifully than conversation ever could. The path curved gently through the meadow. Wildflowers still held the coolness of the night. White daisies, blue cornflowers, pale lavender, tiny buttercups catching the very first hints of dawn. The breeze moved through them slowly. Each flower bowed just enough to greet the morning. Ahead, the horizon glowed with the faintest ribbon of gold. The stars had not yet disappeared. They simply shone a little more softly, making room for another kind of light. The traveler paused. This morning feels different. Elian smiled. It always does. When you've made peace with the evening, the traveler breathed deeply. The air smelled wonderfully fresh. Cool earth, wild thyme, morning dew, fresh bread drifting from the village far below. Everything felt familiar, as though the whole world had quietly been waiting to welcome a brand new day. They reached the highest point of the meadow. There, standing alone beneath the open sky, was a simple wooden bench. It faced the sunrise. Nothing more. No monument. No grand tower. No hidden treasure. Only a quiet place to sit. Elian lowered himself onto the bench. The traveler sat beside him. For a long while, they simply watched. The first golden ray of sunlight appeared. It touched the distant hills, then the river, then the rooftops of the little village. One by one, the windows began to glow. Smoke curled gently from chimneys. Birds greeted the morning with soft songs. The clock tower caught the sunlight. Its weathered stone gleamed warmly. The traveler noticed something. The great clock still showed no ordinary hour. Its hands remained resting between moments. But now, they understood. Some moments were never meant to end, only remembered. The traveler looked toward Elian. I think I know why you repair clocks. The old clockmaker smiled. Tell me. The traveler watched the sunrise spread across the valley. You don't repair time. You help people notice it. Elian's gentle laughter floated into the morning air. The finest repair, he whispered, is helping someone remember what was never truly broken. A robin landed nearby. It sang one bright note, then another. The melody rose into the fresh morning, simple, cheerful, completely unhurried. The traveler smiled. Everything felt lighter now, not because life had become easier, but because it no longer felt necessary to carry yesterday into today. The old clockmaker reached into the pocket of his worn brown apron. He withdrew the small brass key that had hung around his neck since the beginning of their journey. Its polished surface caught the morning sun. He held it in the palm of his hand. This has opened many doors, he said softly. The workshop, the room of forgotten moments, the garden of golden minutes, the house where every evening was welcomed home, the quiet room before morning. The traveler nodded. It has. Elian gently placed the key into the traveler's hands. It felt warm, surprisingly light. I can't keep this, the traveler whispered. The old clockmaker smiled. You already have. The traveler looked down. The little brass key shimmered gently. Then, without disappearing, it simply became lighter until it felt almost weightless. The traveler placed a hand over their heart. Somehow, the warmth remained there, not in their pocket, not in their hand, but quietly within. They looked back toward the valley. The village had fully awakened now. Children laughed on cobblestone streets. A baker carried warm loaves to the shop window. Gardeners watered flowers, climbing old stone walls. Neighbors greeted one another with easy smiles. Nothing remarkable, nothing dramatic, only ordinary life. Yet after the journey, it no longer seemed ordinary at all. Every simple moment held the quiet glow of something precious. The traveler turned to thank Elian, but the bench beside them was empty. There was no surprise, only a gentle smile. Across the valley, the clockmaker's workshop stood with its windows open. The morning breeze stirred the little bell above the door. Its soft chime drifted across the fields, not as a goodbye, as a reminder. The traveler rose slowly. One last look at the village, one last breath of the cool morning air, one last moment of perfect stillness. Then they began walking home, not carrying souvenirs, not carrying treasure, only carrying a quieter way of seeing the world. And perhaps, tonight, when your own evening arrives, you may notice the sky before darkness settles. You may hear the distant song of birds returning home. You may pause, just long enough to watch the last light resting upon a quiet window. You may breathe a little more slowly, smile a little more gently, and remember that every evening offers a small invitation to let the day become complete, to forgive what was unfinished, to notice what was beautiful, and to trust that tomorrow has already begun preparing its gentle welcome. So now, allow your breathing to become slow and easy. Feel the mattress supporting every part of your body. Let your shoulders grow wonderfully heavy. Let your hands rest peacefully. Relax your face. Soften your jaw. Allow every thought that still lingers to drift away like one of the little lanterns upon the quiet lake. There is nowhere else you need to be. Nothing more to finish. Nothing left to solve tonight. The stars are keeping watch. The evening has been lovingly repaired. The clocks have stopped counting. The village is asleep. And somewhere, an old clockmaker smiles, knowing that another weary traveler has remembered that the richest evenings are not the busiest ones, but the ones we truly notice. Sleep deeply now. Dream gently. And when morning arrives, may it find you without hurry,